Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. So today I am kind of in the middle of a project already. I am working on some suspension bushings on my 2008 Escape here. And why am I working on my 2008 Escape, you might ask? You know, this is a 13-year-old car. It's got 150,000 miles on it, which really isn't a lot for a car these days. But you know, it runs good, it drives good, but it's making some noise in the back. And if I were to take it into a dealership, this could easily cost, you know, hundreds, maybe even into the $1,000+ range to have some bushings installed on it. But at home I can do it. It's a pain. Basically, I took, this is the, let's see, the right side of the car, and I've got drum brakes. I'm going after these bushings, the control arm bushings, and you know, they're a pain. One of the things I figured out is that there's actually, you know, you got the rubber bushing here, and inside of that, I'll show you on the bench in a second. There's a steel insert in the middle, and through that there's an alignment dowel that you know, an alignment shop could use. They turn it to make the whole controller move in and out, and that adjusts your alignment. But that alignment dowel fits really tightly inside of that bushing. And because I live in Michigan and there's a tight fit there, it rusted together, which meant that I had to get the Sawzall out and cut it out. And now I'm in the process of getting the old bushing out of the control arm. Basically, I took what looked like this, and if we come over to this side of the car, I made it look like this so far. So I've got it apart. Let's see here. The damage so far, one of these links, the upper link, didn't want to come off, so I'll have to play with that a little bit. But the bushing here seems okay, and the ball joint here seems okay. Same thing on the bottom link, so that's good. But then here is the, let's see, there's the bushing in question. And I'll show you on the bench a little bit better in a minute here, but this is what I need to get out of the control arm, so I can press a new bushing in and then put the whole thing together. And so anyhow, oh, also there's the spring and the shock on the ground. One thing I always do when I do suspension work is I paint the springs red, just because it looks cooler. So we need to paint that spring red, maybe shoot some black on that shock. The shock works good still, so let's make it look a little bit newer. But let's get this guy up on the bench, maybe clean up some of this disaster over here, and see if we can't get that bushing out. Well, I've got the bench cleaned off enough now where I can actually get this control arm, this is the lower control arm, up onto the bench to work on. And let me show you a little bit closer what the big problem here was. So here's the control arm. This is that bushing that goes up to the body. And you can see here, this outer, you can see, actually see kind of two, you know, metal steel bushings here together. A kind of narrower inner bushing, and then the outer one that's part of the rubber bushing. And the problem is that those fit so tightly together that once you get a little bit of rust in there, they don't want to separate. So you can kind of see the lines here from where I took the Sawzall to that. And that's okay. That's a good way to get it down. And I'll tell you, these Lennox carbide plated blades are a wonder. They're kind of expensive. It's like $15 for one blade, but that sliced right through there. So let me show you how this actually kind of all fits together. And so here I've got the pieces. All right, so here's my new bushing, and really, you know, this is why I'm here doing this. I'm doing the work. And why am I doing it at home? That's because this is a $15 part. If I were to take this to the dealership, this would probably be a $500 or $600 repair, especially when it goes sideways and becomes difficult, but it's only a $15 part. Now this is the alignment piece. When this is installed, so I've got the bolt that holds this all together. So this actually has like 3 layers. Unfortunately, the bolt came out. So the bolt goes through here, and this goes through the bushing, and it's 3 layers there. But when this is on the car, there's a couple tabs on the car, like welded to the body, that sit on the sides of this. And as you know, somebody's doing an alignment, you know, if they turn it this way, it moves forward. If it's like this, it's in the center. And if they turn it this way, it goes over to the side. And that's how they make the whole, you know, the whole thing move to do the alignment. So now what I need to do is get this bushing out of here, which is probably going to be a pain because this steel part needs to come out of this cast iron sleeve here. So that's going to be a pain. I'll get the ball joint press set up and try to get that out. I'm sure I can get it out. It's really just a matter of how difficult is it going to be. So, at some point it's like, oh man, maybe I should have paid $500 or $600 to have a repair shop do this. But, I'm cheap. I've got, some time on the weekends, whatever. I don't mind doing this. Also, this is like a totally spare car. Another reason that I don't want to replace my 13-year-old car is that, I only need this car maybe for a weekend once every couple of months, but I do need it. But I don't need it often enough that I want to get a new car. So instead, I'm good with putting $100 and some elbow grease into it here and there to keep it reliable. I'm not trying to restore the car and keep it perfect, but I do want it to be reliable and safe, and I can do that with a little bit of time and just a little bit of money. So let's get this bushing pressed out so I can get the new bushing pressed in there and slam this thing back together. So now we've got this inner part of the bushing out of there. So it's easier to see what we have to get out at this point. And maybe it's hard to see on the camera, but there is still this outer ring here, the outer metal part of the bushing that fits really tightly inside of this control arm. So that's, this outer metal part. So, it's a little tricky at this point. If I take one of my press adapters, it actually fits in there somewhat snug. So I'm going to try and just push that through first and see if it's going to grab this bushing and force the whole thing out. If it doesn't, then I might need to use either a punch or take my grinder and kind of cut a slot in it, then like peel it out with a screwdriver. This is always one of the hardest parts of replacing a bushing, is getting this old steel ring out so we can then press the new bushing in here. So anyhow, I'll keep on working at it. I'm sure we'll get it out of there. Well, so, I'm playing with some different adapters here for my press, and most, I've got all the regular press adapters and a bunch of adapters I've kind of made over the years that work for the press, and none of them really fit on this bushing well. And part of that is because the sidewall is so thin that in order to get something that, fits on this thin sidewall without also contacting this outer, area here, it really takes just the right size adapter, which I don't have. So I'm resorting to more primitive methods with taking my grinder with a cutting burr on here. So basically a rotary tool with a cutting burr. And I'm going to cut a slash through this bushing and do as best as I can without getting into the wall of the control arm here. But then that's going to let me kind of peel the bushing back and pull it out of here. And I'm going to do it on this side of the control arm, which is the strongest area. So if I do get a little bit into the wall, it's really not going to impact the strength of the control arm overall. So let's see if we can't cut that open and somehow peel this bearing bushing sleeve out of here. So I just got finished, using my grinder to cut open this bearing shell, and you know, I know this is not what my dentistry tools are meant for, but it actually worked pretty well. Let me show you here how that turned out. So you can see, oh, let's see, focus. So you can see through this shell a little bit, because actually this control arm is hollow. You can see my pinky behind there. So that actually helped me see when I was cutting through all the way, except on the very ends. So I think I've got this shell cut through all the way. At this point, I think I'll be able to basically take a chisel and a hammer and kind of, you know, work around here and start to basically peel it off of there. So, you know, maybe it's not the conventional way to take these apart, but you know what? It works. There's really no wrong way. As long as you get it apart and you can do it somewhat efficiently without damaging stuff, there really is no wrong way. So let's see if I can get this the rest of the way out now. Oh, look at that. You can actually see it already kind of peeling up here. Let's try the other side. Oh yeah, look at that, just peeling away. So, you know, all that I think I really had to do is alleviate some of the tension. I mean, there's a coating of corrosion, I'm sure, between here. You can see this whole control arm is corrosioned. So, you know, thank you, Michigan roads, for that. But once you give it a little bit of relief, look at that, I can just press it out with my chisel. So that is cool. It actually worked better than I thought that it would. It's the first time I've used my my dentistry tools to remove a bearing from a control arm. Look on the bottom side, you can see this lip here coming out. If I can just grab a hold of that. Let's see, grab some more tools out of the drawer here. Just grab a hold of that and pull it out. Look at that. I am impressed. I've impressed myself today. That is genius. Who would have ever thought? Removing a bearing with a grinder. So look at that. See, I just kind of cut the seam open, and I don't think I even really hurt the control arm. Yeah, okay. So you can see here that there's there's a little bit of an indent there where I ground it on both sides, but you know what? That's not going to keep me from enjoying it. So I'm going to get some sandpaper and just, you know, lightly sand the inside of that. And then this new bearing is getting, or a bushing is getting pressed in there, and then we'll be going back on the car. So I've got the new bushing pressed into the control arm down here. You can see that. And, you know, there's a little tiny gouge from where I use the grinder to cut the old shell out, but it's small and it's not really going to be a big deal, especially since it's on the, you know, inner edge here by the main, you know, arm. That's the strongest area on the control arm, so I'm not concerned at all about that little gouge. But now, you know, I've got this kind of back into place. And I decided to put these arms back onto the control arm while this was on the bench, or I guess you could call this the knuckle. So now I just got to bolt those back up in the body here. Control arm goes back up in here, and you can kind of see, you know, I'll show you, this is where the problem really was before, is this, and this is a brand new alignment sleeve. This was like $40 from the dealership. They're pretty expensive. But the way that that goes right into this bushing, you know, it's that joint that sees together with rust, and that's why I had to cut this out. So that goes in here. The end of it kind of, you know, looks, it's a hex. So that fits into this other side. And then there's a bolt that goes through here, and inside this other side of the alignment dowel, it's threaded, so that bolt will thread together. So it's kind of like a three-piece retainer for that control arm. Also, I painted my spring while that was out because, you know, it looks cooler, and I think it's something you should always do when you take the springs out. And I prefer red, but you know, any color. And you know, sometimes I would take these like rubber bushings, the mounts off the top, but this one was on there pretty good, and I didn't want to disturb it, so I just sprayed the whole thing. You know, just sanded it off a little bit to get dirt and stuff off, and then sprayed it with some red real quick. So anyhow, I'm gonna throw this back together, kind of get everything loosely back up in there, and then lift it up, support it with the floor jack so it's at the the height it would be when the vehicle's sitting on the tire, so I can tighten everything down. So let's throw this together. So I'm a little bit sweatier, probably than last time you saw me here. And that's because this car is continuing to fight me the whole way. But the good news is I got the control arms in place. Let me turn the camera around here. And, it took a new combination of things. What I end up doing here is using a floor jack to basically bring the suspension up close to what it would be at normal height. And man, that red spring looks good in there. Wow. But then this upper arm, so I had both of these arms bolted on to the knuckle before I put it in the car. And this upper arm slid right into place. You can see I've got the, both of the bolts through now, but that lower arm did not want to go in place. So in order to get it in place, I took a ratchet strap, one end on the knuckle here, the other end on the, I guess that'd be like the cross member, and pulled that really tight. I mean, so tight that I couldn't hardly even actually pull any tighter, or ratchet it any tighter. And then I had to take a hammer and pound on it down here by the ball joint to push that arm into place on the subframe. And then when I did that and I got it close up here, then I used a pry bar between that subframe and the arm to pry it down into place while also sliding the bolt in. So anyhow, now I have, all the bolts started, which really is great. Just kind of start everything loose until you get everything started. Now what I'm going to do is jack the floor jack up so it's basically sitting at ride height. I'm going to go to where this floor jack picks it up off the floor jack, and then just take enough pressure off so it's back in the floor jack. So I want to be safe here. Then I'll take my torque wrench and I'll torque the knuckle to the body here, the unibody, and then those two arms I'll torque to the subframe. Then I can put the shock back in place, and essentially the suspension's back together at that point. I'll just have to reassemble the drum brakes. I wanted to put brakes on it anyhow. It needed brake shoes, but also you have to pull the parking brake cable out of the drum in order to pull the knuckle off. So even if I wasn't putting new shoes on, the drum still had to come apart. So anyhow, I am most of the way here. I'm sure it's going to continue fighting me, but soon it'll be back together. Hey everybody. So it is the next day now, as you can see, because I'm wearing the next shirt. I think this is probably like my third or fourth shirt through this process, and that's because it's my third or fourth day working on this. I got a real job, during the normal day, and I've got a 6-year-old and a whole lot of life to do aside from fixing this car here. So it's, just a little bit here and there, but I finally have this side back together, and it is still fighting me every step of the way. So you can see here I've got the drum back on, um, but another problem that I encountered is I wanted to put a new set of shoes, brake shoes on while I put this back together. And I went to my favorite aftermarket parts website and I ordered a set of aftermarket brake shoes for a 2008 Escape. And there's only one size drum on a 2008 Escape. So I ordered pads for it. And guess what? They're too big. So with these brake shoes on, and adjusted to the narrowest setting, the adjuster in basically all the way. So far that the wheel cylinder bottomed out on itself, I still couldn't get the drum on. So it's like, what am I putting the springs on wrong? So I put the original shoes back on, which still have some life on them, and I guess I'll run them for now because I don't have another set of brake pads. But I put the original shoes back on, and the drum slid on no problem. So I ended up just adjusting that out to, where there's just a little bit of drag. So, the brake shoes are nice and tight. Put the shock back on here. I still need to put these lines. This is the parking brake line. I still need to put that on and secure this wire for the wheel speed sensor. But this side, other than that, essentially is done. So over the next few days, I'm going to take the other side apart and do the same thing on that, replace the bushing, paint the spring, and put it back together. And so next time you see me, hopefully I'm driving this thing down the road, and hopefully the noise that I took this all apart for to begin with is no longer there. I'm pretty sure it was from that bushing. But anyhow, thank you for watching, and have a great day.